Dear students, today I will discuss about the function of application layer. So some important function of application layer which is given below in the slide. Now the first function of application layer, it means application layer and user interact directly with the software application. The application layer is the OSI layer closest to the end user. This layer interacts with the software application that implement a communicating component. Application layer function typically includes identifying communication partner, determining resource availability, and synchronizing communication. So all communication between applications require cooperation that is managed by the application layer. Now, the next slide, the application of namespace. The namespace is also the function of application layer. In the namespace, to be unambiguous, the names assigned to machines must be carefully selected from a namespace with complete control over the binding between the name and IP address. So simple definition of namespace. And purpose of naming, address are used to locate objects. Second purpose, names are easier to remember the numbers. You would like to get the address or other object using a name. And second, next purpose, DNS provide a mapping from name to resources of several types. So these are few purpose of naming to identify the IP address with form of names. So domain name system definition, like to identify can entity TCP/IP protocol use the IP address which uniquely identify the connection of the host to the internet. However, people prefer to use names instead of address. Therefore, we need a system that can map a name to an address and conversely an address to a name. In TCP/IP, this is domain name system, so it is not known as DNS system. So domain name space, like to have a hierarchical name space, a domain name space was designed. In this design, the name are defined in the inverted tree structure. With the root at the top, the tree can have only 128 levels, level 0 root to level 127. So in domain name space, we discuss following topic: label, domain name, and what is the domain. So according to this tree, so the domain name space. This is the root node, and this root node associated with different type of network like ARPA, COM, edu, dash address, org, add, jw. This is the different type of domain name space. So domain name and levels are defined in this tree. First it started from root and level. First level is edu, and edu is represented domain name like that, edu dot. Next, suppose next level is FSDA, next level. So domain name like that, FHDA dot edu. Now next level ATC, the domain name like that, atc.fhda.edu. Next challenger, so challenger.atc.fhda.edu. This is the domain name. So domain name represented, how represented, showing in this tree. So figure of domain represented like that. The root tree, first domain .com, yeah, .education, and next domain is inner domain of the domain, and next the subdomain of the inner domain. So representation of domain like that. So distribution of namespace. The information contained in the domain namespace must be stored. However, it is very inefficient and also unreliable to have just one computer store such a huge amount of information. In this section, we discuss the distribution of domain namespace like that, hierarchy of name server, zone, root server, primary and secondary server. So hierarchy of name server, first denoted in this graph, root server is the first node started from 0, and these root servers connected with other number of the server like that, alpha server, education edu server, com server, us server, and these server are connected with these domain like fsda.edu.pk.edu. This is the representation of domain other server. So zone and domain are represented like that. Root are connected with domain com. This is known as zone, and this com associated domain and this zone associated with zone and domain. So this part is represented zone and domain, whole part is domain, and this part is represented as zone. So a primary server load all information from the disk file. The secondary server loads all information from the primary server. This is an important point. And next, when the secondary download information from the primary, it is called zone transfer. Again, repeat. A primary server load all information from the disk file. The secondary server load all information from the primary server. And next important point, when the secondary download information from the primary, it is called the zone transfer. Next topic is DNS in the internet. DNS is the protocol that can be used in different platforms. In the internet, the domain namespace tree is divided into 3 different sections. First, generic domain, country domain, and inverse domain. So, in the next slide, we discuss about the generic domain, country domain, and inverse domain. So, DNS in the internet are divided into 3 categories, already discussed. Root are divided into 3 parts: inverse domain, generic domain, and country domain. Now, first explain what is the meaning of generic domain. The generic domain states that generic domain define the registered host according to their generic behavior. Each node predefined a domain. So some example of generic domain allows 7 possible and 3 character label like that: com, commercial organization; education, educational institute; gob, governmental institute; int, international organization; mil, military groups; net, network support center; org, non-profit organization. These are the generic domain. So generic domain are connected with the help of root level, and generic domain representation like that. Several of domain are connected here and represented that challenge, suppose challenge.ats.fsda.edu index to address. This is the example of generic domain. Generic domain represents the according to the generic behavior. So some generic domain labels are defined here. Aero means airlines and aerospace companies. BIZ, these are generic labels of domains. Generic domain, BIZ, business or firms similar to com, commercial organization; coop, cooperative business organization; educational institute, government institutes; information service provider; international organization; military group; museum and other non-profit organization; name, personal name, individuals; network support center; non-profit organization; professional individual organization means pro. These are some generic domain labels. Next is the category of internet DNS is country domain. The country domain is the section follows is the same format of generic domain, but uses two character country abbreviation like that US United States. And second level can be organized or they can more specific national designation, and the address like that anja.gov.ca.us can be translated like that Anja College in Cupertino in California in the United States. This is the address of country domain. So country domain root label are connected with country. That abbreviation of country in two characters like that US United States, FR means France, CA California, Cupertino district name, and Anja College. So anja.cup.ca.us, this is the index domain, and example Anja College of placed in Cupertino, state is California and country is United States. This is the example of country domain. Last domain is inverse domain. The inverse domain is used to map an address to the name. This may happen, for example, when a server has received request a client to do a task, where a server has a file that contains list authorized client, the server lists only the IP address of the client. So example of inverse domain like that, root label and root label connected domain ARPA, and in a number of domain in address like that 132, 34, 45, 121. So index name address 121 in inverse form 121.35.34.132.in.address.arpa. This is the process of detecting and identifying the domain of inverse domain. Some definition like that resolution. Mapping a name to an address or an address to a name is called name address resolution. Again, define the definition of resolution. Mapping a name to an address or an address to a name is called name address resolution. So following topics are associated with resolution, resolver, and recursive resolution. So recursive resolution like that root server are resolve the recursive approach like that client first send the finder.edu, next send the approach the edu, next is the root server, and root server are connected to com and com connected to mcgra.com. Similarly, mcgra give the response of commercial domain, and commercial domain give the response of root server, and with the help of root server provide the response of edu, and edu provide the response of fsda.edu, and fsda provide the response of client. So process of client and server response like that. This is the approach of recursive resolution. Similarly, iterative resolution are shown in the figure. Now, in this approach, client request to fsda.edu, fsda response to client, second process. Next client connected with edu. Now edu provide the response of client. Next client approach the root server. Now root server provide the response of client, and client approach the commercial site, and commercial site provide the response of client. This is iterative resolution. Individually response and individually response provide client to each domain. So DNS message like that. Definition of DNS message. DNS has two types of messages, query and response. Both types have the same format. The query message consists of header and question record. The response message consists of header and question records, answer records, authoritative record, and additional records like that. So query and response message header like that. So in the graph, query header and question section in header format of query, and response header format like that: header, question section, answer section, authoritative section, additional section. These are sections associated with response. So header file format are used. These are attribute identification, flag, number of question record, number of answer record, all zeros in query message, number of authoritative record and zeros query message, and number of additional record, all zeros in query message. Is the header format of response. So dynamic sometime ask the definition of DDNS. What is the DDNS? So DNS master file must be updated dynamically, and the dynamic domain name system, the full form of DDNS means dynamic domain name system. Therefore, for the device to respond to this needs, in this DDNS, when a binding between a name and an address is determined, the information is sent usually by DHCP, means Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, to primary DNS server. This primary server updates the zone. The secondary server are notified either actively or passively. This is the definition of DDNS. Thank you.